Okay, PAC TV, let me in. Okay, welcome to Citizens Petition Day, the February 12th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Plymouth, Massachusetts Advisory and Finance Committee at the Great Hall of Town Hall in Plymouth. We'll go right to the roll call, check everybody in. Ms. Butler, are you present?
I am present.
Mr. Dunn, are you present? Okay, Mr. Dunn is texting me here. Okay. He's in the waiting room. All right, well, I'm going to mark you present. Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Lally?
Here.
Mr. Lawler?
Here.
Mr. Malaguti?
Here.
Ms. O'Connor?
Here.
Mr. Pizarro?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Richards? Good to
Here.
see you. Hope you're feeling better. Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Tompkins?
Here.
Mr. Trudeau?
Here.
And it is a unanimous. Thank you
Recording
all
in progress.
for being here. Okay, very good. All right. Okay, so we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid format. Some of us are here in person, some of us are on the Zoom call, as well as some people in the public and presenters are here, and some are on Zoom as well. If you would like to see this meeting, we'll be airing it on Comcast 9, Verizon 47, and on PAC TV's YouTube channel, which can be viewed at pactv.org/stream. The ground rules of this meeting: any member of the public is welcome to come. I can't do anything about that. PAC TV, can you let Brian Dunn into the meeting, please? Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you. All right, let's get back to anybody from the public is welcome to make a public comment anytime at the beginning of the meeting, during a particular discussion, or at the end of the meeting. The ground rules here is you get 5 minutes to speak. Any member of the public that would like to attend the meeting virtually may do so through our Zoom link. You simply go to zoom.us, enter our meeting code 995-2986-0638, and our meeting passcode is 100 and 131, 100, 131. If you would like to join us by telephone, it will be voice only. We will not be able to see you. You may call in at 929-205-6099. Again, our meeting ID is 995-2986-0638, and you can enter the meeting passcode 100131. So, any questions so far? Good. The views of the members of this committee are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the majority view of this committee. So, would anybody like to start us off with a public comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will go to the agenda. We have some minutes to approve. The January 22nd, 2025 meeting minutes. Any edits, any questions? Do you want to make a motion to approve?
No, I want to suggest an edit that on page 5, where it's old, new, and other business dash none, that be moved to page 4 ahead of the third paragraph, the none be crossed out, and that would be the beginning of the discussion around the nuclear fund right after the HEROES Act.
Okay.
We've already discussed it. It's already been edited on the one that'll get posted.
Okay, thank you
With
for
that
that.
amendment, I move the amendments.
Okay, all right. Any other comments on the minutes? I will give you the honors of making a motion, Mr. Lally, to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2025. Would you like to make a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you so much. And Mr. Malaguti, would you care to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a first from Mr. Lally. We have a second from Mr. Malaguti. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on the minutes? To approve or not?
Approve.
Mr. Dunn? Is he still not in? Okay. All right, we'll come back. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Abstain.
I'm sorry?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we let PAC TV know there's an awful echo in this room, and it's very hard to hear, for example, what you are saying. At least I'm having a very difficult time.
Okay, what can we do to resolve that one? Because we have PAC TV right here.
Is it multiple mic?
Testing, is that better? Okay, so we'll take it, the vote was 11-4, 0 against, and 1 abstention to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2025. And Brian Dunn, would you like to vote on the minutes at this point?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right, I'm going to continue on. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I will speak up as loud as I can. All right, let's get to work. We have 3 articles, 27, 28, and 29 to go through today. And we'll start with Article 27, Citizens Petition, Zoning Amendment, Light Industrial to Mixed Commerce District, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw official zoning map of the town of Plymouth by changing the designation of lots 11B, 26A, and 27 on the Assessor's Map 102 located off of Commerce Way and Cherry Street from light industrial to district mixed mixed commerce district, as well as to amend associated sections, provisions, definitions, tables, charts, and procedures pertaining thereto, and to take any other action relative thereto. This is a petition by Bill Hallisey and all, and Mr. Hartman is up on the dais.
So
and
with your permission, I'd like to start. We also have Attorney Bill Sims here representing the applicant, so
Thank
he
you.
can fill in. But again, with your permission, I'd like to start.
You have my permission.
So Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development. So first, I just wanted to call attention to where we are and what we're looking at. So this is Route 3 heading south. This is the Kingston Mall. This is Route 44, Commerce Way. This is Colony Place. So again, if you're coming from Plymouth, you could get off the ramp on Route 44, head down Route 44. And the site we're talking about is this site right here, right at the entrance to the town of Plymouth from Route 44. And I'm just going to, zoom in. So this is a site, this is the TL Edwards. It's a gravel, it's 54 acres. It's a gravel processing facility. So they're not actively removing gravel from the site. They truck material onto the site, and then they process it and then truck it off to the site. So you have different size materials that they're sorting. And just a little more zoom in. And again, we can see that this is the convenience store and car wash right here. This is a new Roundtree Hyundai car dealership. This is the road as it heads up to the mall, and then again Cherry Street heading it back towards the town of Plymouth. And the site we're talking about is bounded by the town of Kingston, Cherry Street, Commerce Way, and then Route 44. And I just did a couple pictures so we can see what this is. It's pretty obvious. You have these very large mounds of material, some settling ponds there, all just, again, a processing facility that's on this site. So the request is to take this 54 acres and rezone it from light industrial to mixed commerce. The biggest difference between light industrial and mixed commerce is that retail is allowed in light industrial. It's still, retail is allowed in mixed commerce. It still allows for all the other industrial uses that you have, or not all, but most of all the industrial uses, but also allows for that retail option too. So they can speak a little bit to why they're proposing this. I know many people including myself, tend to feel like we have enough retail in this town. But in my opinion, and the planning board and select board both unanimously voted to support this, but in my opinion, there are three things that could happen here. If this zoning change doesn't happen, then this, which is a kind of an eyesore on one of the major gateways to the town of Plymouth, you're coming in on Route 44 and you see this gravel processing facility, that could continue to operate. We could do the zoning change that could allow for retail here, but allow for those other uses. Or if we say no, in my opinion, this is going to go the way that almost all these other properties have gone, to yet another 40B high-density residential development. So again, I know there is some concern at times about what could happen here with retail, and do we really need more retail? But I feel, and planning board and the select board both agree, that this is a far better option than keeping that use that's there now at one of the gateways to the town, or to say no and then eventually probably, and again, this property owner has come to us and said, I have no interest in doing residential, I want to do something else. But if this doesn't happen, there may be he may be forced to sell it, and from what I've seen in Plymouth, it's most likely would go to yet another 40B. So again, unanimously supported by the planning board and the select board, and I'll let Bill jump in and give any other comments he has. Thank you. And I should point out, you do have the map in your packet, and you do have a comparison between the uses allowed in mixed commerce and the uses allowed in the light industrial district.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Lee. Good evening, everybody, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Bill Sims. I represent T.L. Edwards. Is everybody familiar with the site? I do have photos. If anybody's interested in seeing, I got tri-board photos. If anybody wants to see them, I'll break them out. I'm happy to do so. If you're not exactly familiar with exactly what the present condition of the site is. Just by way of history, T.L. Edwards has been around since 1969. This was purchased from Landers, and I think about 12 years ago. And at present, Mr. Edwards plans to consolidate this operation with his main plant in Avon, Massachusetts. He's 80 years old, moving things around, trying to make things a little bit easier to manage with his family. He's got all his kids in the business. So at the, if you're not familiar with it, right now they do processing, as Lee mentioned. There's approximately about 100 truckloads a day on average that come in and out of there. Not just their truckloads, but they sell the processing materials to other developers and contractors as well. So you got a lot of trucks coming in and out of there. And if we get this rezoned to the MC district, which is what Mr. Edwards wants, then it's going to be a totally and very radical change to what's existing on this particular site. He does not want to sell it to another competitor who does the same thing that he does. He wants to change the use. Like I said, the impetus behind that is to consolidate his operations. Given the nature and the surrounding business and commerce, we feel this is probably the most appropriate and attractive use of the property. We've been engaged with a number of potential buyers, none of which have come to fruition yet because we got to get this thing through town meeting in April. So with the support of all the boards, and so far we've had great success with everybody, as Lee mentioned, and we're looking to get the support of this particular board, and then we have the precinct chair meeting coming up next month as well. So the positives of this particular rezoning article would include the elimination of the high volume of daily truckloads hauling gravel, sand, similar materials, replacing with a clean operation of some form of retail or something similar along those lines. And one thing that a lot of people don't recognize is that because T.L. Edwards is classified as a manufacturing corporation under 850 CMR 58.2 is tax exempt for personal property in the town of Plymouth. So all of that equipment that is operating in that facility does not pay any personal property taxes to the town. So whatever goes in there next will be paying taxes to the town of Plymouth. Retail, something similar is going to be paying taxes. Right now it's exempt. So I think those issues are probably the most, outstanding ones that I can present to this board, and I'll make myself available for questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sims. Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. Howard, start us off.
Good evening, Mr. Sims. Is any portions of the property undisturbed and therefore might be appropriate to be conserved as open space?
Good question. It's mostly the building. Yeah.
If you look at that aerial, you go to that first, well, that one, it's pretty much 100%. I mean, I'm going to guess that those areas you see along the highway are part of the right-of-way. Now, maybe there's a little bit of undisturbed land at the very top of the hill. I'm not sure if that's in Kingston or Plymouth, so you may have a very small sliver right up here on the Kingston town line. But this, again, I think is all within the right-of-way, so
So,
almost
Mr. Hartman, you
completely-
don't believe that there's any land
Not of any
appropriate
significance.
to be reserved? Thank you.
Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we have been, I was at the selectmen meeting when this was talked about as well too. So there was talk of the possibility of a couple entities that could come in. I'm not going to name because it's just speculation at this point. But that obviously would probably be more of the anchor because it's not going to take up the entire 54-acre parcel per se, unless they're going to do like one of the other competitors that came to a different town next to us in Plimpton did, which is more of a different aspect of that instead of like its cousin at exit 5 for BJ's, which is a whole different animal. But so would this be looking at, if that comes to fruition, it would be more of a planned shopping center in a way than actually like a commercial park or even an adjunct of an industrial park, but not the industrial component?
So it's kind of hard to predict, Mr. Malaguti. It'll be up to the ultimate buyer as to what they want to put in that site, and if there's permitting required, they'll have to go through the various boards here to do so and receive whatever kind of, support or non-support. But I can only say at this point, without disclosing too much, that Mr. Edwards has been engaged in conversations with a number of potential suitors for the site. But again, as I said in my opening, we're going to need this to pass through town meeting in April, and then actual discussions with real potential buyers, can take place once we have the approved article passed through town meeting. So until that point, we can only speculate. We'd be silly to toss names out there at this point. I know people have talked about Costco and the potential of various entities such as Costco, and yeah, we're certainly going after everybody and anybody that would fit within this particular region, be something that the town would be supportive of, be attractive to the town, and obviously be far more desirable than the operation that's currently going on right now. You're talking, car traffic versus 100 truckloads of sand and gravel per day. So it's going to be something that the town, I hope, will be proud of at some point. We're not going to just sell to anybody. The town's going to have to approve whatever happens there if there's permitting involved and those kind of things. So.
Thank you. And my other question is for Lee.
I like the evil smile when you say that.
Thank you. So with that, and I know you reiterated it a bit, as the change of zoning for this, as a lot of people in town, myself included, basically say we have enough retail, and why would we be taking light industrial and converting it when we keep saying we need more industrial land and zoned industrial land, which is pad ready, which is somewhat pad ready since it's flat, and access to all the utilities and easements that would be needed. And our existing light industrial, in my opinion alone, is becoming more of a nonprofit park than an actual industrial park. based upon the entities that keep going in there. But with that, do you feel, in your department's look at this, do you feel confident that this will have some sort of healthy balance for our needs, not just tax-wise, but for industry-wise?
Yeah, so I can't predict the future. I mean, I do see that the retail market's changing, so I don't see the kind of demand we've seen previously for a lot of retail
You
space.
guys are all muted.
So I don't see a lot of demand for a lot of additional retail space, but it is possible. But that's why we did the mixed commerce zone, because it
We
allows
just
for.
lost sound.
I'm sorry, we're having issues. We can hear you, Brian. We could hear you, Christine.
Can they not hear us?
You're not hearing us? Okay. All right.
Any better yet? I'm going to do the TV commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Somebody else can take over.
Oh, now, okay. You can hear us?
We can hear you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So the mixed commerce still allows for all of those industrial uses, but it adds a special permit. I should point out, it is a special permit, so you're not just going to see a Costco show up. It's got to go through the ZBA. So the only thing I go back to, and the reason why I feel this makes the most sense from my position is, if they can't find a use industrial, if they can do that now. They can do it with the zoning change. If they can't find it and they can't do the retail, it will be another 40B. And again, that's what I keep seeing in all of these properties. So I think just gives a little more flexibility. I agree completely. We'd rather have the retail stay where the retail is, but it's location, location, location. We've talked several times to people about a Trader Joe's. They don't want to be at Benny's. They won't do that because it's too far off the highway. A site like this, which is right at Route 44, right at Route 3, right between Colony Place and the mall, it's a place, for better or worse, that's great for that type of use. If you wanted, and I'll use the Costco because people have mentioned it as an example, I'm willing to bet, I'm almost positive, that there's a limitation, so they can't go in Colony Place because they have the existing Walmart there, so there's probably a restriction on that. They can't go down on Long Pond Road because the BJ's there. So if you want on one more use like that, this makes sense. Again, but all of those other industrial uses still could happen.
Okay, thank you. And then just one quick comment, then I'll go to I'll leave it for the next speaker. To Mr. Howard's point that there basically is no original forested area on that space. I believe I'm the closest person to that site that's on the board here. I drive past it probably about 15 times a day for work and leisure. That the only part that may have it is the little part that the Sisters of Divine Providence, I think, owns, or that little tiny wedge-shaped piece at the corner. But other than that, it's completely altered.
And if you look, those pieces have been excluded. So there's the pieces that are not part of TL Edwards, and they're not part of the zoning. So they'll be kind of landlocked light industrials that sit out there.
Mr. Lally, the floor is yours.
Mr. Hartman, if this passes a town meeting, is there a date certain when the existing operations have to wind down?
No. And so this is a use that existed long before we probably had zoning, pre-existing non-conforming, that can continue indefinitely. As long as they maintain that use, it could be there for another 20 years. So there's no guarantee that that use stops. We can only rely on what Mr. Edwards has told us.
But once it's sold to perhaps to someone who might use it for other than the existing kind of operations, it could never go back to being.
Correct. So once they abandon this use, then yes, and if they just cease operations for 2 years, then they lose the right to maintain it. And once they switch to a different use, they've lost the right to go back to this.
Okay, Ms. Richards, I see your digital hand. The floor is now yours.
Thank you. This question would be for Mr. Hartman.
I'm listening.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's really, I'm not used to being on this side. So as far as how they would access this site, or where from they would access this site, just out of curiosity.
Well, they have frontage on Cherry Street and they have frontage on Commerce Way, so it could be either one or both of those. And again, if it's a use like a retail use, they'll be filing a full traffic study for us, and we'd be going through a peer review of that traffic study, and that would all be vetted through consultants. If it's an allowed use that's industrial, wouldn't be as intense, but again, they have frontage. It would either be on Commerce Way or on Cherry Street.
Okay, thank you. And just my comment would be anything that switches this zoning out of the hands of a 40B, I would be in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Any other questions for Mr. Hartman or Mr. Sims? Yes, Mr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
I'm just wondering, through the chair to Mr. Edwards, do you pay any pilot fees to the town?
No. So the taxes that are being paid to the town right now are real estate taxes like anybody that's a landowner in town. It's just the personal property tax on all the equipment that's located on site.
Okay,
So there's two different things that happen with non-residential or even secondary residential homes. There's a personal property tax for equipment. So if we look at before we had deregulation at the power plant is a good example. The generators, the reactor, all of that was personal property, that's what they call it, and was all taxable. So what he's referring to is, so if this was any other use, all of that equipment, all the facilities you see there, that would all be taxable as, they call it personal property, but those mechanical pieces would all be taxable. But because of state law, it's exempt, so they just pay the real estate tax.
yeah, that's why I was wondering if they had a payment in
No.
lieu of taxes.
No.
Okay, thank you.
I think if we could do it, we'd do it, but that would be inconsistent with state law and the state exemption.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions for either Mr. Hartman or Mr. Sims? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Snyder, would you make a motion to approve Article 27?
Make a motion to approve Article 27.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Butler, would you please second that motion?
Second.
So we have a first from Mr. Snyder and a second from Ms. Butler to approve Article 27. Do we have any discussion? Well, hearing and seeing none, we will go to the vote on whether you approve of Article 27 or not. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Malaguti?
No.
And Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes?
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve of Article 27 by a vote of 12-4, 1 against, and 0 abstentions. And thank you, Mr. Sims and Mr. Hartman, for your information and presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Yeah, good luck. All right. Let's move on to Article 28, Citizens Petition, Bylaw Amendment, Public Comment. Proposed article to add a new bylaw requirement to town bylaws, adding paragraph 173-13. Each precinct caucus shall have provision in its agenda for public comment. At the discretion of the chair, public comment may be made at one time or interspersed with presentations at the meeting. Public comments cannot be censored. Public comments are simply comments and not debatable. A minimum of 2 minutes shall be allowed for each public comment speaker, but may be allowed a longer period at the discretion of the chair. The sequence of public comment speakers shall be one precinct residents, and 2, Plymouth Town residents, and 3, any other member of the public. This petition has been brought to us by Herbert G. McKay. And Mr. McKay, the floor is yours.
Yeah, my name is George McKay, and I'm the precinct chair of Precinct 8 in Cedarville, but I'm here as a citizen presenting the citizens petition. And since you've read it into the file, I won't repeat that. So we'll go right on to the next slide.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
I wanted to give everybody some background on this. The last town meeting we had, we voted on the charter. And there were parts of the charter which I didn't care for, and one of those parts of the charter was the statement that they wanted to have precincts have additional meetings from the mandatory 3 that we now have. Down in Cedarville, we have precinct meetings, and they're very lightly attended because we have a Cedarville steering committee on a monthly basis, and those are attended by dozens of people. When I have my caucuses of the precinct, we have very few people attending because they get most of their information from the Cedarville Steering Committee. So I opposed that language in the charter, and I asked the Charter Commission why it was in the language, and they said they were getting complaints from voters in town, residents in town, that the precincts were not listening to them. And so they felt to solve that problem of precincts not listening to the voters, they should have more precinct meetings. Well, in my precinct, as I just mentioned, having more precinct meeting didn't mean anything because everybody goes to the steering committee. So I proposed a change, and the change I proposed passed. In addition to that, at the same time, another town meeting member, Al Donato, had put through an article similar to this one to solve the same problem, which was to make it mandatory that every precinct, when they have a meeting, open it to public comments. And that came about for 2 reasons. One is to give the public more input to the precinct town meeting members, but also in addition to that, there were precinct chairs that when they thought the public was going to make comments against their own opinion, they would not put public comments in their agenda for the precinct meetings. So I wanted to make it fair and open to the public, so Al Donato had his article denied because he didn't cross the T's and dot the I's, and so it was not allowed at town meeting. I tried to slip it in as an agenda as part of my change, and it was ruled out of order because it was beyond the scope of the particular thing I was addressing. So it didn't get any attention at the last town meeting. Al Donato goes south in the winter, and he said to me, since you have an interest in getting this done, can you take over this for me? So I went around and got enough signatures to get it to this point, and I did some additional research, and what I found was that people were a little bit discouraged in not getting their input successfully to the precincts. So this proposes that we make it mandatory when anybody has a precinct meeting, they must have a requirement for public comment. In my research of public comments, I noticed that a lot of people were doing various types of things, like putting public comments at the end of the meeting. I noticed that what you do is you intersperse it with your meeting, but I felt that since we're making something mandatory for the 18 precincts when they meet, it should be more structured. And so that was factored into the language. The first presentation I made was to the Select Board, and they had a couple of comments. One was they didn't care for my language describing the sequence of people that could vote in a precinct meeting. And to be quite frank with you, I took the sequence as a compromise of what other organizations do. The one thing they complained about, well, I'm not sure that's the correct way to, the one thing they commented about was the fact that I used the term residents. And I did that because I wanted to allow an owner of a property, whether they reside in that property, to be able to speak in a certain sequence, in addition to the people that actually reside in the home. But I was not very strong in terms of who would speak first. I just wanted everybody to speak first. At the select board, they had a strong feeling that the language should be changed to make the sequence be different than it's currently structured. And to be very honest with you, I agreed with some of what they said, but at this point, I wanted the article to go forward as written and get it to the town meeting, and if people want to talk about the language or modify the language or do anything they want, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that the precincts, when they meet, have in their agenda a line item that says, we want to hear from the public. The other issue that came up with the Board of Selectmen was the time limit. And as you know from reading the article, I put a time limit in, and that time limit could be expanded at the discretion of the chair of the precinct. Some of the people at the select board meeting thought that I should make it 1 minute rather than 2 minutes, and their opinion on that was that if you have 100 people show up at a precinct meeting, which I think has never happened, at least not in my lifetime, and you allowed each one to take 2 minutes, that would be 200 minutes, and you'd be there much, much longer than you wanted to be there. I pointed out to them, though, by tradition, the select board allows people to speak for 3 minutes. So anyway, I did some further research after they questioned the time limit and expanded my research on who in this area allows people to speak and what the time limit is that they allow. And you'll see in this last slide here, these are what I found in addition to what I had previously researched, and I could not find in any of my research anybody's time under 2 minutes. If they have public comment, they allow at least 2 minutes for people to speak. And I also asked the town clerk to give me the written requirement that the Plymouth Select Board has, but there's nothing in writing. But by tradition, they have a 3-minute limit. So anyway, that's the story. Other people that I've talked to since then have various opinions on what they think the time period should be and what they think the sequence of the speakers should be. And that's fine. Everybody seems to have an opinion on this. The other issue was one of the things I put in the text was that the comments cannot be censored. And that was based on a ruling by the Massachusetts courts that you cannot censor public comment. If you allow them 2 minutes to speak, the public can say anything they want. They can get nasty with you, but you must allow them that time by right. So anyway, that's where we are, and I'd like to see this go to the town meeting, have people discuss it, get their opinion, and if they want to put articles in to amend it, that's fine with me. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKay. And for the record, we give people 5 minutes, but then again, they're not banging down the doors to get in, so I don't think we ever worry about getting 100 people. Would you like to make a comment before I open it up to questions from our committee? And please step to the podium and tell us your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Steve Lyden. I'm Vice Chair of Precinct 17. One of my precinct members, Al Donato, brought this up. because our chairman refused to put public comment in the agenda. Talking to some of the residents in the area, they wouldn't come to our caucuses because their feeling was, well, if I can't speak, what's the sense of going? So this is why I support this article, and I hope you guys too, because there is a purpose for it and it's a need for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Layden. That's very insightful. Okay. Mr. Stone, would you like to make a comment now as well before we get to questions from our committee?
Yeah, thank you. I believe that public comment is necessary, it's important, it should happen. We allow it in, by the way, I'm vice chair of Precinct 16. We allow and encourage public comment, and we have had occasions where the auditorium was flowing out the door. We don't have a steering committee. I can think of 2 occasions when that happened. Unfortunately, not for some of the governmental things we really might care about, but one was of a traffic light consideration, and the other was over water bills. And the auditorium was full to the gills, and with the water bill, it was out the door. We set a certain amount of time for each person, but the chair did reserve the right when to cut off the dialogue. We do that in town meeting. It's not done by a chair or the moderator. It's done by a vote of the town meeting members. And when things start getting repetitive and going on longer than it's useful, I think it is important to be able to set some kind of a time frame around that. So I would like to see the timeline changed. I do agree with some of the comments from the select board, which were similar, things going on repetitively and not really being useful at some point. So I would like to see the statement about 2 minutes removed, and instead inserting in that the chair, after consultation with the precinct town meeting members present, shall determine the length of time for any segment of public comment and how much time should be allowed for each public comment speaker, but longer times may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. I think doing that, putting a time frame on the length of public comment and allowing speakers to speak, but having a parameter around that, will still codify a timeline for comment, but allow the caucus to have the capacity to set some kind of parameter around that time, and requiring the chair to consult with the rest of the precinct's town meeting members, I believe should assuage anyone's concerns that a chair might act in an authoritarian and controlling manner, which I believe is part of what's driving this. I didn't put in taking a vote, et cetera, because that becomes perhaps onerous, but I think if a chair is required to ask the other town meeting members what they think is appropriate, in terms of timeframes, it would be rare that any chair would oppose that or remain a chair for very long. The other piece that I have some concern about is that public comments cannot be censored. As Mr. McKay pointed out, that already is decided law. We don't need to make it part of a bylaw. We might need to educate our town meeting members more about that, but there is one tricky thing about codifying that. And this came from a conversation with our town clerk, and folks may want to have her come and speak about this. What that law that the Massachusetts Supreme Court decided is that, yes, you have to, if you put it on the agenda that you're having public comment, there are certain things you have to do, and you can't censor most of it. If you don't put it on, you don't have to follow that. But if you do, part of what the KP law said in looking at this is, and I'm just going to read briefly this one paragraph, we encourage municipalities to review the form and practice of their public comment policies, ensuring that there is no attempt to regulate civility, rude, or disparaging remarks, or other content-based criticisms of public officials. In our view, public comment policies may continue to regulate everything that George is suggesting, but there's one thing here that they said they could limit, which is acting in a non-peaceable or disorderly manner. Our select board does not have a public comment policy. What was suggested to me is that if our select board did develop a policy that would allow for all of this, but include acting in a non-peaceable or disorderly manner, then town caucuses could choose to follow the town policy. That's not been decided law. This is something that's been talked at conferences in the state by town clerks.
All right, Mr. Stone, you've reached the 5-minute mark. I can give you another minute, or we can
Just a
vote
minute.
on longer. So if you could wrap it up in
Yeah.
60 seconds.
So I'm worried about codifying that without having the select board perhaps set up a public comment policy, which might give chairpersons the right to control people who do start becoming disruptive. So
Okay.
those are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. And I would just say, as a point of order, your comments are on the record, and I would encourage you to attend the motions meeting before town meeting. We do not vote on motions here, we vote on articles. So your comments were appreciated and on the record, and we can't change the article as it is right now. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to some questions of Mr. McKay. And Mr. Dunn, I see your digital hand is up, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, although I'm going to contradict the last thing that you said. We can change this, and I'm actually going to propose that we change this. And I wanted to ask to see what the petitioner thought of my proposed changes. What I would like to do is amend it and get rid of everything after the sentence that says, at the discretion of the chair, public comment may be made one time or interspersed with presentations at the meeting. And then I think the rest of it can be struck. I think there's and I just want to see what Mr. McKay and Mr. Donato think about that. I think that gets rid of all of the issues that Mr. Stone just talked about. And if the court case already says it can't be censored, then that's already case law. So I don't think we need to include that. So I just wanted to see if you guys would be agreeable to that.
Well, I think that I would like to see this as written go to the town meeting and have a wide discussion of it, because there's a number of issues that Ken brought up that I think need to be discussed at town meeting. So I would not like to take a lot of this verbiage out, because I've done enough homework to think that it's relatively important to a number of other towns and cities that have this language in there. So my feeling at this point, even though I agree with many things that Ken said, I'd like to see this go to the town meeting as is, so we can get other people's input. And, you know, I'm welcome to a lot of amendments to this, but the purpose of this article is twofold. One, to get this issue on the table, and it is on the table. And the second thing is to have the town meeting tweak it if they want to, but get the article to the point where it's a bylaw that makes it mandatory for every single precinct, when they have a meeting, to put public comment on their agenda.
I would just say that as written, I would vote against it. And it's something that I would like to support, but your current bylaw says that residences, which are houses and dwellings, not residents, are the ones who get to speak. So I don't even think that this would mean anything if it was passed, because you're talking about letting houses vote or houses speak. So I think the amendment would make it so that it's actually does what you want it to do and would include a required public comment. I think I might still offer the amendment, just because I don't think it can go forward as written.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunn. I'm going to go to your next-door neighbor up there, Ms. Richards.
Hi, thank you very much. I will agree that these precinct meetings are for the public. They're for the precinct members to go in and speak. Whether it takes an hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, 2 weeks, then that is exactly what town meeting members must allow time for. So if town meeting members or precinct members, chairs, vice chairs, members are not allowing the public to come in, then we are not a representative town meeting, because that's exactly what this should be. So I'm going to pose a question. Mr. McKay, if this article is in danger of failing tonight because we can't amend it, what is your comment to that?
Say that again, I didn't quite hear everything you said.
She was basically saying if you're not going to amend it, it could fail this committee to move forward as a recommendation to town meeting. I think that's what Ms. Richards had in mind.
Correct.
And what would your response be to that?
Well, I think my response is still the same. In retrospect, I would have maybe made some changes in the signatures that I asked for. I have no particular ownership of the last sentence, for example. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. But I felt it was important to have some guidelines on who should speak first. Most of the people that have these kind of regulations in their committee and in their towns have a sequence, and it says most of the time, citizens of the town should be able to speak first, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I felt that even though I had no strong opinion of who speaks first, second, and third, I thought I should add it to the article, and so that's what I did. And I still have no strong opinion on who gets up to speak first, and if you struck the last sentence, it doesn't mean anything to me, as long as they have an agenda item that says public comments, and anybody that wants to put in a public comment is allowed to do that. So that's my personal opinion, and that's not written in the proposed article.
Okay, Ms. Richards,
So
did you have a follow-up to that?
I'm sorry, I had a follow-up. So I think in your article language, it does say, at the discretion of the chair, public comment may be made at one time or interspersed with presenters at the meeting, which, is exactly what we just did by allowing 2 members of the public to speak prior to members of the committee. So that was at the discretion of the chair. So I think in that regard, then the rest of it doesn't need to be there. So you've already covered everything in the beginning of your article. So I would agree with Mr. Dunn. Should he make that motion to amend, I would support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Malaguti, was your hand up? No, okay.
I just want to clarify that what Mr. Dunn said is to strike the last sentence. Is that correct?
He's saying to strike everything after dispersed with presentations of the meeting.
I'm
So
sorry, I
that
couldn't
means
hear you.
public comments cannot be censored, would be struck, and everything after that. Is that correct, Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
So public comments or simply comments not debatable, period, and strike the sentence a minimum of 2 minutes? And everything after that? Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to understand what he was proposing.
Yes, starting with public comments cannot be censored, starting with that and striking everything after that as well. Okay, I see Mr. Green, your hand is up. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. What is your intended enforcement mechanism for this bylaw? If somebody just says, well, I don't allow public comment anyway, so what do I care about this bylaw? What is the recourse?
Well, I guess it's the same thing. When we had the meeting with the committee that was working on the new charter, and they put in the line item that said every precinct must have multiple meetings beyond the 3 that were there, I said the same thing you said. I said, who's going to enforce this? And they said, basically, nobody. But the enforcement really comes from the precinct residents and the public and the press. So if I'm a precinct chair and I do what some of the precinct chairs do now and say, I'm not going to have public comment because I know the people that are going to speak are not going to agree with my opinion, there's no policeman that's going to knock on the door and say, that's bad. The only real enforcement is when you go to the polls, you don't vote for that person again. So that's the enforcement.
Thank you. And I mean, I would suggest this is something that COPC would monitor if somebody is not allowing public comment in direct violation of the bylaw.
Well, I mean, it's
Censored.
It's a public agenda, and if there is no provision for public comment, then, and this bylaw passes, then for, at least for a while, I'll take a look at all of them and complain about it if somebody doesn't do that. And I'm sure Precinct 17 will be more than happy to do the same thing. But beyond that, you're right, there is no enforcement mechanism.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, back to Mr. Lally.
So, since we're winding down, I think I'd feel better if we kept the next to the last sentence in and chopped the last sentence. I just think a minimum of 2 minutes, et cetera, sets an expectation for both the public and the chair. And I think that's an important sentence. But I'm very much with Mr. Dunn on the last sentence and Ms. Richards.
I would agree with that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, Mr. Malaguti, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. My sentiments are similar. I just have one question, though. If we amend or don't amend tonight and it fails, and it goes toward the motions meeting, do you feel that the last sentence that we're talking about, basically because of it saying residences instead of residents, would be challenged by Mr. Trifoletti and have it changed to residents to keep it in compliance for acceptance? Or would it be stricken as the prior attempt for this same article?
That's what I'm nervous about. Because I want this
Point
to
of
pass.
order, question of order, if I may.
Well, there was I believe the question was put to Mr. McKay.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, the way I read the question is you want me to give an opinion of what Mr. Trifoletti is going to do?
Well, not that. What I'm stating is, do you feel that the language, especially if the last sentence is kept in, would be strong enough and you would be able to persuade enough the actual, because I know what you're talking about based on this. I think it should be residents instead of residences, but I understand what you're talking about with residences. For that, I'm trying to figure out if, when the motions meeting happens, if it could get stricken down by him because it could be, to him, I's not dotted and T's not crossed, even though it's implied in what it would be that he may not see it as implied, in my opinion.
Well, I have no opinion on what his opinion is going to be.
Okay, fair. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Malaguti?
No, other than that, I think the minimum should be in there. It could be whatever. It doesn't matter to me the length of the time for it, but I think there should be a standard minimum to it. And countering what the select board said, it's not going to make a meeting go for hours and hours on end because the chair at meetings can limit the scope depending on how the night is, what's on the article, what's on the actual agenda and everything, but it still allows the public to state whatever is on there, and the chair can say if there's any new questions instead of things that are constantly reverberating over and over and over again. So I think that the minimum should be on there, and it's not going to necessarily dissuade chairs from holding longer sessions or shorter sessions.
Was there a question in there?
Sorry, that was more of a
statement,
comment on there, sorry.
Okay, so you do not need to answer a comment. You don't want to? I believe, Mr. Lawler, the floor is yours.
Yes. Mr. McKay, thank you very much for coming here. I appreciate this. You're getting some strong feedback here of a lot of people doing the nod for getting rid of the last sentence. Would you be willing to get rid of the last sentence, considering the fact that that there is some strong feedback coming through right now?
Yeah, if you voted to get rid of the last sentence, I'd be fine with that. I think there's a lot of discussion about the sequence when it's presented, but I have no preference.
Good. So you will be willing to get rid of the last sentence and go with what Mr. Dunn had said?
Yeah, I can't do it, but you can
No,
do it,
I
and
got it.
I'll be happy with your
I'm
decision.
just moving things along here. So Mr. Dunn had suggested that.
Well, I think Mr. Dunn suggested taking everything out, starting with public comments
Then he
cannot be
said that he was
censored.
willing to go with
Just
what?
taking out the last sentence? Are
Yes.
we,
I
I want to speak for you,
also
Mr.
still
Dunn.
like
then
to
he
remove
agreed.
public comments cannot be censored. Public comments are simply comments and not debatable as well, since that's case law and doesn't need to be in there. And this will simplify it.
He wants to go deeper.
Oh, I thought Mr. Lally had said something, and then Mr. Dunn had agreed with it. Sorry. I thought that was my, all right. I'm sorry.
I did with the 2-minute part. He said he wanted to leave in the 2-minute minimum.
Okay. I'm going to send it
Okay,
back
so,
over to Mr.
so let's finish up with the questions, and then we'll go into discussion, and then we can really wrap it up with discussion. Back to Mr. Lally.
Sure, this is just I think, a procedural question. So I think we're debating perhaps someone putting forth an amendment to the language here, and hypothetically, it'll get seconded, and then it'll get discussed, and then it may get voted on. Should it happen to be voted down, can we then introduce another motion to approve it with further amendments? Because people were thinking it's a one and done here, and I think
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, we need to come to some common ground
Okay,
at some point.
So I would suggest then that,
Well, we're right now, we're in the question phase,
Discussion's
so
okay,
let's
then
wait
I'll be
until
quiet.
discussion. Any further questions for Mr. McKee? Yes, Mr. Trudell, the floor is yours.
Sir, would I be correct in the last line where you talk about the precinct residents, the town residents, and any other member of the public? How does the precinct chair control that sequence after the first individual?
Well, people could get up and suggest that they're precinct residences, and they're not. And there's very little control. It's like the enforcement issue.
Thank you.
Who's going to enforce that? You're right. And that's why I don't have strong feelings on the last sentence, one way or the other.
Okay, seeing and hearing no further questions for Mr. McKay, I would like to entertain a motion to approve Article 28 as is, and then if there's, we'll put the motion on the floor, and then if somebody wants to come in with some other motion, we will entertain that. So, starting with Mr. Lawler, would you like to make a motion to approve Article 28?
Motion to approve Article 28.
And Mr. Howard, would you please second that motion?
This would be to approve the motion as written.
Correct.
Second.
Yeah, we have to at least entertain that. So we have a first from Mr. Lawler and a second from Mr. Howard. Now it's open discussion. Would anybody like to further a motion or other comment? I believe Mr. Dunn had his digital hand up first, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Howard.
I'd like to make a motion to amend by striking the sentence, public comments cannot be censored. Public comments are simply comments and not debatable. And then also striking the last sentence, the sequence of public comment speakers shall be 1, precinct residences, 2, Plymouth Town residences, and 3, any other member of the public.
Okay, so you would be...
Point of order.
You would be leaving in a minimum of 2 minutes should be allowed for each public comment speaker, but may be
Yes.
allowed a longer period at the discretion of the chair. You're leaving in that part.
Point of
Yes.
order, Mr. Chairman. You have solicited a motion which was seconded. We need to discuss and vote on that motion before we...
I made a
can
motion
continue
to
the motions.
amend.
Yeah, there's a motion to amend on the table.
So
I
that takes
believe-
precedence over
I
the
believe in a
original
point of
motion.
order, we need to address the motion to amend and vote that either in or out, and then come back and close up the original motion to approve as is. Okay?
I was,
All right,
can I
so-
second that motion?
Okay, so we have we have a first from Ms. Richards. Are you,
I was seconding Mr. Dunn's
okay, so you're
motion.
second. So Mr. Dunn has made a motion, and Ms. Richards has seconded that. Discussion, and it would read, each precinct caucus shall have provision in its agenda for public comment at the discretion of the chair. Public comment may be made at one time or dispersed with presentations at the meeting. A minimum of 2 minutes should be allowed for each public comment speaker and may be allowed a longer period at the discretion of the chair. End. Is that how you would like to present it? Discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
I didn't get to say much before, but the way this was presented, there's no way I would have voted for it. But now I actually like this new amended motion, and I can fully support it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snyder. And any other comment before we take a vote as is, as I just announced? Okay, so we're going to vote on that amendment. And Ms. Butler, how do you vote on our amended Article 28?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And so we have 1, 2, 3. So 13 voted in favor, 0 against, 0 abstentions. So that passes. Now we will wrap up going back to the original Article 28, and we will vote on that, and I suppose we all know where this is going.
Point of order.
Yep.
I think we have to now vote on the article as amended.
We already
Because we
did. We just
voted to
did.
amend it, but we haven't voted whether to recommend it or not, I believe.
I believe we just voted on the amended article. We voted to approve the amended article.
Because the first motion that was made was a motion to recommend approval of the original article, and then a motion was made to amend that, I think we have to go back and then vote yes on it as amended now. Because if we had voted down the amendment, we would now be voting on the article as submitted.
Okay. Well, let's take the vote. I'm sure we know where this is going to. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on the actual amended verbiage?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro? Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
13 voted for, 0 against, 0 abstentions. So that amendment has been approved unanimously. Now let's go back and vote on the original Article 28 as was presented by a petition by Mr. McKay. And how do you vote on that, Ms. Butler?
No.
Mr. Dunn? Okay. Mr. Green?
No.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Mr. Lally?
No.
Mr. Lawler?
No.
Mr. Malaguti?
No.
Ms. O'Connor?
No.
Mr. Pizarro?
No.
Ms. Richards?
No.
Mr. Snyder?
No.
Ms. Tompkins?
No.
Mr. Trudell?
No.
So unanimously voted down by 13 opposed and no proponents and no abstentions. So we have basically voted for an amended Article 28, which we will send to the, recommend to the town meeting. And we thank you for bringing this to us and your patience and your explanation. I hope it made for a better article in the end for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Last citizens petition. It's going to be Article 29, Home Rule, the digital legal notice, an act allowing, quote, print-free digital legal notices for the town of Plymouth. This petition has been brought forth by Richard Cirque, who is at the podium right now. Mr. Cirque, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rich Cirque. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2. Article 29 proposes a home rule petition, which, if passed at town meeting and subsequently approved on Beacon Hill and signed by the governor, will give the town of Plymouth the option to publish legal notices generated by Town Hall online. For example, now the Plymouth Independent and any other online publication that may come along in the future. And not just in print, such as in the Old Colony Memorial. State law currently requires that all legal notices must be published in a print newspaper. But we all know that since that law was written, delivery systems to inform the public have dramatically changed with the onset of websites, email, online news journals, and online podcasts. As a result, the now antiquated requirement that legal notices must be published in print has had the following unwelcome consequences. First, and most importantly, it results in less notice rather than more notice because far fewer people read the Old Colony than the Plymouth Independent. The Old Colony does not report local news because it no longer has any local reporters. Access to the Old Colony is limited to those who pay for a subscription. The Old Colony has just 2,000 subscribers left, while the Independent has 24,000 subscribers. Print publication is substantially more expensive than online publication. The town can expect savings based on the general market rate for digital-only notices being less than print notices. The requirement that legal notices be published in print really results in a windfall for print newspapers as opposed to online newspapers. If this home rule petition is passed by town meeting, it'll then go to Beacon Hill for its approval. And I submit to you that the likelihood of Beacon Hill approval is high. Two other towns, Bedford and Arlington, have home rule petitions that have been approved by Beacon Hill, and ours was patterned after those. There currently are two other towns, Franklin and Lincoln, whose home rule petitions are awaiting approval by Beacon Hill. All members of our state delegation, Senator Fernandez, Representative Badger, and Representative Lenatra, are in support of this home rule petition. And finally, a bill has been filed on Beacon Hill to amend state law to allow all legal notices, not only those that are generated by town hall, to be published online. But passage of that law will take longer than passage of our home rule petition. Our home rule petition is basically intended to cover the time between the present and when that state law gets approved, after which our home rule petition will be subsumed in the state legislation. I can tell you that I've been to the caucuses of precincts 12 and 3, and I've been to the committee of precinct chairs, and I've been to the select board. And all of those entities have voted to support this article. And I'll be glad to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cirque, for doing all that research and bringing that to our attention. Any questions? Oh, would you like to make a public comment before?
Steve Lyden, Precinct 17. I don't support this article because if it passes, it's not, and you still have the state law that says one thing, and we have this petition that says another thing. It just seems like it'll be in conflict with state law. And I know a lot of attorneys will not put stuff that on a website or in digital if it's against the state law. So you have two things convicting with each other, and it doesn't, I don't think it's a good idea. Also, I think if it's going to go into, on the web, the site should, and if it's going to be, I think it should be on the town website, and if not, if it's going to be on other independent, Plymouth Independent, that they should offer it to the town as a public service. It's not like they're a real newspaper that have printing presses and distribution and trucks. So I think it should be a public service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Layden. Mr. Stone, you have a public comment?
Two things. Number one, I think if the state does pass a home rule petition, then it's legal in the town. Also, I just want to emphasize that pretty much every major newspaper and even the Old Colony does have digital publications. It's the Wicked Local. So they could still do that. People would still be able to choose between which paper they might want to use if they decided to go digital versus print.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Mr. Stone.
Let me just add one thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I'm here as a town meeting member. I'm not here in behalf of the Plymouth Independent. I'm not a member of their board. I'm just here as a concerned citizen seeking to make sure that public notice serves its intended purpose. I think that the citizenry is hungry for local news, and this is a way of satisfying their thirst.
Okay, thank you for that addition. We have some questions for you, so don't step away. Mr. Lawler, would you like to start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cirque, good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening.
What the information that you're saying that you would like, quote unquote, published in the Plymouth Independent, is that information available on the town's website?
Yeah, I assume it is, but the question is how many people look on the town's website to determine...
No, that's okay that you answered the question. So we've spent tens of thousands of dollars in Plymouth to develop the latest and greatest rendition of our website that has the Ts crossed and the Is dotted. We really want to kind of direct people to our website that not only has probably this information, but information all about our town, all about our charter, all about the rules and regulations. I mean, everything that we need to have our townspeople know about. We really want to try, when I was on the Charter Review Committee, it was a known fact that we were trying to drive people to our website. And in doing so, it created kind of like, okay, what do I want to know about the town? Boom, let's go to the website. And how does the town work? Oh, website. So the town has developed a sophisticated, I like it, it's easy to use website that has all the information that we need and drives people to funnel into our website that we want all the information encapsulated into. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that.
This is an extra tool for the toolbox. It's not meant to take any tools out of the toolbox. The home rule petition would authorize the selectmen to use one or more of the options that are available to them. Print, online, the town's website, the state website, and any other option that exists. So it's not meant to be mutually exclusive of the town's website. And it would be up to the selectmen to choose which one or ones they wanted to use. That's all. It gives you, in addition to options A, B, and C, it gives you D.
A follow-up, Mr. Lawler? You're good? Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. Dunn, Ms. Richards, and I'm going to come back for Mr. Lally. The floor is yours, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cirque, for putting this forward. I just wanted to clarify after the public comment from Mr. Lydon. This, if passed, will go to the legislature, and they have to pass it and get signed by the governor. It will become state law, which would make it not in conflict with state law, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this, and I think it's, we need to meet the people where they are. If the Plymouth Independent has 25,000 people a month going, then we should put our notices there too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Ms. Richards, the floor is now yours.
So actually, I'm going to piggyback on what Mr. Dunn just said. I agree with this wholeheartedly. I think what a lot of people, should understand. So I'm going to call upon my Registry of Deeds. 80% of all of the recordings at the Registry of Deeds are now done electronically. Only 20% are done with somebody actually walking into the registry. So when you record your mortgage, your deed, any of those things, they're done electronically. So we are smack dab in the middle of the digital era. And everybody I know, it doesn't matter how old you are, young you are, everybody has digital media, social media, and that is where we are. So the era of receiving a newspaper is very quickly going away. So I totally agree with this. In fact, and as Mr. Lawler has put, the website is really great. I subscribe to all of the meetings, all meeting notifications, so I'm kept up to date with every single meeting. And I think the public should be aware of that they can, go on to all of the meetings, watch them, and participate in them remotely. So this is a great idea. Thanks so much for your putting this forward.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richards. We're going to go to Mr. Lally.
So, first of all, my first reaction when I read this was, it's about time. The second thing is I was a little alarmed in reading Mr. Cirque's examples and, i.e. the Plymouth Independent specifically called out, but I went back to read section 2, and that's the A, B, C, and D. So I hope, following up on Mr. Lawler's comment, that the primary choice of notification will be the town website. And if the town chooses to choose other mechanisms, that will be great. So I'm very much in support of this. I would perhaps be inclined to reorder A, B, and C, and D so that the town website was A, but I'm not going to go there. And I will be fully supporting this article as proposed. Thank you.
Okay, it's a lot of alphabet soup there. Mr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
When you first look at this, it looks like it makes a lot of sense. There's a few things, though, that are really important to note. One is that legal notices, even if we pass this, could be a problem because of a state law. The biggest problem I see is a problem this town has had, and that is not the publication itself, but the responses underneath can be a big problem. So Plymouth sends their notice to the Independent, they put it on their website, and 50 people write garbage about the selectmen and everybody else. This is what happens. So I actually think it's a great idea to push everything toward the website and have people go there and drive traffic there, which makes a lot of sense. I support a digital choice. I'm just not sure at this point that this is the right time for that. And I understand the newspapers, and I've been writing for newspapers for 50 years. I know that they've changed a lot since I started. But my fear is the stuff that isn't in the quote-unquote digital paper, but the responses of the people who write reckless stuff. That's my concern.
Okay, I'll let Mr. Cirque address that question.
Mr. Snyder, the way I envision this happening would be, there would be a section on the dashboard of the Plymouth Independent, which would be entitled Legal Notices. And just like there's a page in the newspaper of legal notices, when you look at a print newspaper, so that you would go to a section of the dashboard of the Plymouth Independent, and you would see all the legal notices. No comments about it, just the legal notices. It's not going to happen. And then letters that come in about it would be under the letters section, so they would be separated.
If you look on the letter section, you can write underneath the letter section, and you can make comments on it. There is no dashboard. There is no place to have legal notices on that website. If there was, and they were put on there, they would have a response placed in there.
I'm not saying they wouldn't have a response.
I'm just telling you that it doesn't make any sense to do this at this point in that particular publication that you're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I agree this is a long time coming. During the selectmen's meeting last night when this was discussed, it was iterated, and I don't want to get it wrong, but I believe Mr. Brindisi said that I think last year the town spent roughly about $25,000 or so on public notices and legal notices through the print distribution. And this one would give us a little bit of extra funding for other projects that wouldn't be on the back of taxpayers that are already doing this. Also, the access for this, I, like a majority of people tonight, don't believe the Plymouth Independent is the right choice for this, and I don't think that it would, because I don't know if it complies with the Federal Rehabilitation Act of 1973 for accessibility for this, and also the protections and safeguards for the legal notices. But also, as well too, if we, as Ms. Richards indicated before about her signing up for multiple meetings that are taking place and other events are taking place that are sponsored through the town website, that it's been talked about to click on link to the newsletter so that you can get the distribution right to your phone or to your email for that, and that's a good distribution for that. And we could also put it on, if necessary, the Mass Public Records website as well, too, as another digital outsource, which is protected with safeguards for that, and also has the federal accessibility standards for either deaf, blind, and all those other attributes as well, too. So I think this is good for that, and I think that the, if I'm wrong, I believe the town manager has the discretion about where the legal notices get placed, and that's up to him. While our opinions are there, it's up to him to dictate where they're placed, but this gives the advantage to save some money and give better distribution for these legal notices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Mr. Dunn, I see your digital hand. The floor is yours.
I just wanted to make a couple clarifying points. Mr. Snyder was talking about comments below articles. The Plymouth Independent doesn't have a comment section, so there wouldn't be comments underneath any of these legal notices. And I also think, I agree that we should try to drive people to the website, but if people aren't there, they're not seeing these notices, and the whole point is for people to see these notices. So I think we should get them where there's the most circulation and where the most people from Plymouth will see them.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Mr. Dunn. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Cirque? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Green, would you care to make a motion to approve Article 29?
Motion to approve Article 29.
Thank you. Ms. O'Connor, would you care to second that motion?
Seconded.
So we have a first from Mr. Green, and we have a second from Ms. O'Connor. Do we have any discussion on Article 29? Mr. Malaguti?
Yes, I'm supportive of this article, and I don't, even though that there's larger areas of distribution, I don't think that they pertain, because the area of distribution that we're talking about doesn't accept advertising, and this is actually an advertisement for this, so they would have to change their entire financial platform to accept that as their nonprofit, but I am accepting of this article. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Mr. Lawler, the floor is yours.
Did Mr. Malaguti say that he was in favor?
Yes, he did.
Okay. I do question the timing of this, along with what Mr. Snyder had said. Again, you know, we spend a lot of money on our website. Our website is very accurate. It's right from the horse's mouth. There's no reinterpretation. Mr. Cirque's vision is his vision. I think that was probably the wrong thing to say about his vision of how to construct, how PI puts together their format. But then again, let's just think about what we want to do in the big picture here. The big picture is to drive people towards our website. There are 70,000 plus residents, 20,000 are, I have a subscription to the PI. I don't know. We really want to try to move people towards our website. And it's very, very important. The amount of information, the amount of hard work we put into it. I know that's option D, I got it. But any way we can drive people and information right to our website, it's much better. I'd be voting no on this particular article.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawler. I'm going to go to Ms. Richards first, and I'm going to come back and pick up Ms. Tompkins after. Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
So I think we're getting kind of off topic. These are legal notices that just have to be posted somewhere. You know, whether it's in print, online, on the door of town hall, somewhere. And, you know, if people are uncomfortable with them being on Plymouth Independent, you know, they're going to go on the website, they're going to go on Plymouth Independent, they can go, you know, on the, you know, every door of Town Hall. As long as we're posting them, then we're meeting the legal responsibilities. And I think I'm reading the law correctly when I'm looking at, let me see, Chapter 4, Section 13, when you can post legal notices either in print or online with a newspaper. So it doesn't matter, you know, really where we're posting it, as long as we're getting that notice out to the public. So the law doesn't say the website. The law does say published in a newspaper. So where the Old Colony is a newspaper that's probably going to cease to exist very soon, what we have left in the town of Plymouth is the Plymouth Independent. So we can post it there, or we can post it online on the website. We can post it on the side of the building, but it's got to be posted somewhere. So I am going to support this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richards, and I'm going to go to Ms. Tompkins. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I agree that the website should be the main housing location, but I agree also with Mr. Dunn that any other avenue that we can to disseminate information should be utilized. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you for that. Ms. Delally, the floor is yours.
Again, I want to reiterate, passing this article does not obligate the town to use it's just one of several options.
No.
Your microphone.
Sorry about that. I'll say it again. Section 2, passing of this article does not obligate the town to use the Plymouth Independent. It's just, they're one of many options available, including the town website, Mr. Lawler. And that's why I'm voting for it, because it can be the town website if the town manager or town administration decides it to be. So I think this is really worth doing. It's unfortunate Mr. Cirque dwelled a lot in his presentation on the Plymouth Independent and also in his written materials. I appreciate the intent very much, but I think when it comes to town meeting, that may just cause some agita that may not be necessary and may inhibit its passage at town meeting. But I'm certainly supporting this. I think it's going to do what you want to do, and it's going to do what you want to do, Mr. Lawler, and all of us want to see happen.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And Mr. Howard, the floor is yours.
I just want to point out that the Plymouth Conservation Commission rules and regulations require that a public hearing on a notice or request, I'm going to skip down, shall be advertised at the expense of the applicant 7 working days prior to the hearing in a newspaper of general circulation in the town of Plymouth. So again, it can be on the town's website, but it has to be generally circulated as well. So this would give us electronic options for doing so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about distributed and you're talking about a publication that's becoming smaller and smaller over time, it's probably not a bad time to start thinking about going a digital way.
I would agree. I think that's the point here.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Snyder, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think it is time for a digital option. I just don't like the way it's written here and the specifics of the suggested publication. It bothers me.
Okay, duly noted. Ms. Delally,
There is
back
no
to you.
publication mentioned in the actual article. Agreed, and I
Yeah,
think it was a distraction.
The article.
But in the actual
The
article.
actual article
Section
talks about
2,
a print-free digital.
No media outlet other than perhaps the town website and other websites, government websites are called out.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because I was overwhelmed with the presentation.
Okay. Any further comments? Very good. I think we've beaten that horse pretty good. And I won't put a legal notice on that either. Okay, so we are going to take a vote on approving Article 29 or not, and I'm going to start with you, Ms. Butler. How do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 29 by a unanimous vote of 13 for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. And we thank you, Mr. Cirque, for your information and your tenacity, I guess.
Thank you very much for your attention and your questions.
Excellent. Okay, so we've taken care of business, and now any old, new, or other business? Okay, hearing and seeing none. We do have a public comment section. Any public comment? Mr. Donato, you've been quite quiet, but if you're in Florida, we're not going to allow you to speak, because our rule is if the temperature is over 40 degrees where you are, we do not accept your comments.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'll be brief. Al Donato, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 17. I want to thank the committee for supporting public comment and moving that forward. I want to remind everyone, today is February 12th. Today is actually Lincoln's birthday, and his famous saying of a government of the people and by the people and for the people. This whole, as I move down to Plymouth here, sometimes I sit down on Plymouth Rock and watch people from all around the country come here and look. Some laugh, some cry. I would imagine that those from communist nations maybe come here and spend a little more time and really understand what this form of government means. Far different than the old country of Charles I, and we all know what happened to him with Parliament in the old country. But this form of government is here to foster debate from beneath. God, instead of bestowing a fault before the kings and queens, God is established with us, the people, we the people. And public comment helps foster that. We see just this week with the select board, how quickly things move online. We had an issue with a polling place. All that was dispensed last night through public comment and taken care of very quickly. Some select board members did a complete turn and opened up additional polling places. That was done by public comment. We had an issue in Red Brook of a four-way stop. We heard from the neighbors. So we want to continue participation. Brookline, town of Brookline, which usually leads the charge on issues like the Vietnam War, came before us when we had the first Zoom meeting legally outside of a governor's emergency order. Plymouth led the charge of that. So we're continuing to go forward in this 21st century of input from the public. That's what it's about. So I thank this committee. I won't say any more, go any further, but I thank you for moving this forward to town meeting. And I'm sure we'll all have a lot to say. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Donato, and obviously we support public comment, not just to give the public a voice, but it's good for us to hear other information and opinions that help us in in the way that we vote and recommend things on our committee. So it's all good. All right, so we are at the point of adjournment, and I need a motion. Mr. Trudell, would you like to move to adjourn tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Awesome. And Ms. Tompkins, would you like to second that with that smile on your face?
I sure do.
All
So
right.
moved.
Don't oppose it too much. So we have a first from Mr. Trudell, a second from Ms. Tompkins. And Ms. Butler, how do you vote on adjournment?
Vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And it is unanimous, 13-4-0 against, 0 abstentions. We are officially adjourned at 8:45 PM.